Good evening, everybody. My name is Amudan. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I'm part of Marupakkam, and we have been organizing this 22nd Madurai International Documentary and Short Film Festival since yesterday, and we have, as part of the film festival, we're having panel discussions with the filmmakers. And today we are joined by Surabhi Sharma, and we are having a discussion with her and Murali, Dr. Murali, who's part of Madurai Film Festival, will be interacting with her. Mr. Murali, you can start.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Marupakkam for giving this wonderful opportunity to watch rare documentary and short films. Though we were not able to watch all the films, we are getting opportunity to go into some of the films. And for which I would like to appreciate Sambudan for taking enormous efforts to reach the people. And every year he is trying to reach a good number of audience. That is a great challenge he is facing. During the COVID-19 situation, he was able to organize his online festival also. And I thought this time Madurai may not have this. We may miss the opportunity of conducting the festival, but he has come forward to do this festival, really, for which I would like to thank him. And it's good going. I'm happy to know that thousands of people are watching the films given online. Today, I had the opportunity of watching this Returning to the First Beat. And this film has given me, I would like to share my views and also my experience to you. People, after recording this, I hope this will be loaded in the website, and so that many people might visit and know what it is. In this situation, I would like to say that I'm exhilarated to have a kind of, to view this film. Because the whole movie, this film is about Hindustani classical music tradition. And Surabhi Sharma has taken enormous efforts, extraordinary effort to make this movie that has been brought out very well, I would say. So actually, urbanization has taken away the traditional elements of every community all over India. Even in Tamil Nadu also, we have lost many of our traditional art forms because of this urbanization. So this has been brought out well in this movie, one point. So this film brings up about the life world of the Hindustani classical singers who lived in that area called, I think, I'm not able to pronounce well, Girgaon, I think. And because we are very much familiar with Gurgaon and all. This is Girgaon. I think this should be a different place in Bombay. Here, not only the classical singers lived in this place, but also the patrons and quality audience lived. The film establishes that people were very much after this kind of classical tradition in this place. And also, I got a unique experience of encountering the music tradition, especially the Hindustani music culture. We have been exposed to this here, Carnatic music and all other kind of classical forms we have exposed. But this kind of exposition gives me a different look about Hindustani music. This filmmaker taking the viewers along with her to the old traditional music world. Slowly, after showing, establishing each and every shot, slowly, in the beginning, it's a little bit, I felt that why it is so dragging. Though we have seen so many documentary films, and slowly it started taking me into the space. And I have become part and parcel of that project. And I started enjoying, and I have become part of, I am also standing there along with the filmmaker whenever she conducts interview. So that kind of experience I had with this movie. So it is a kind of a revisit to the forgotten tradition, I would say. When I say forgotten, I don't know about North India. In South India, mostly it is forgotten, and people are paying very less attention to these kind of things. Similarly, the age-old ancient buildings still they still exist. That is one thing, because here and all those things, all those buildings have been demolished, and skyscrapers are coming up in the cities. So the old buildings shown in the films, making us to realize the nature of the music happenings in that city, and that's what I felt. And slowly, she has visited many of the halls where the music festivals or where performances were conducted. And watching these films at one stage takes the audience to the inner depth of the music culture. That is the greatness of this documentary film, I would say. And also, she is trying to explain how the traditional art form survives even in the metropolis, like Bombay City, because people started learning in maybe they belong to upper section, I don't know, and they pay more attention. Slowly it survives, and the mantle has been given to the next generation. That's quite encouraging to see. Similarly, the interviews with the people, and interviews with the people who have experienced this classic music, or making us to understand how those musicians were committed to music. Because the next generation here, they talk about their seniors, they talk about their elder people who have performed music shows and who were committed to learn this classical music. And this experience sharing by the next generation people tells us how people were so committed in those days. It was considered to be more spiritual than material. For them, the music was a kind of, I felt that, a kind of spiritual journey they have made without making more effort into that. In the sense that spontaneously they have involved, they have identified music, I felt. Because some of the interviews are clearly, I mean, exposing those kind of things. Similarly, hard work, how hard they worked hard to learn those Hindustani musical and all, because we know that, we heard that it may take at least 2 decades to become an expert in Hindustani music. And those people, they didn't have big financial support and all, I believe. They have committed themselves to learn that music. The journey of learning was a continuous one, it seems. It's surprising to see even today, people are after this traditional music. In every state, I think we can identify this kind of music tradition. And I was telling Amudan also in the morning, in Tamil Nadu also we have Nadaswaram and Davil tradition is here. Nadaswaram is a kind of Shanai instrument. We used to play in all temples and other festivals, especially for marriages. Nadaswaram is an important Mangal Vadya. So they have to do it. And those tradition, it's also slowly, when people are evading, it's slowly vanishing, say. And I wonder that, but this Nadaswaram people belong to, mostly they belong to most backward community or a BC community. In the sense they were not supposed to, in the sense they were not allowed to go in those days. It was like that. They were not prohibited from entering temple in those days. But this particular section was given all privileges, even to live along with the Brahmins because of their musical skills and tradition. Similarly, we have just this kind of movie can be extended to Tamil Nadu situation also. So it is even content of this film reveals that how women are also restricted. And I was wondering because to my best of knowledge, we have very less number of women singers in Hindustani, not when compared to male singers. And this film, in a subtle manner, she has brought out the fact that women were restricted from learning music in those days. As they didn't have education, they could not demand for even this right, learning right also. Even men folks were not permitted, it seems. Even sometimes women came, they were all dancers and professional dancers, and they were not recognized by upper class people. So even the Brahmin boy was banned by a Brahmin family for the reason that he has learned this music from a Muslim guru. Since mostly this kind of music is associated with the Muslim tradition also. So when they learned the music from Muslims, she has brought out the fact that some of the Brahmin guys are not at all even permitted to enter into their homes because they have learned it from a Muslim teacher. So that kind of aversion towards religion is established in a very subtle manner. This film registers the fact that Muslim musicians have played a vital role in propagating this Hindustani music. This is one of the very important point I would like to stress. This film has very, again, as usual, she has made everything in a very subtle manner, and it is up to the audience to understand the consequences or the implications of those kind of subtleties. As a social activist or as I'm very much concerned with the society, I would say that this kind of thing should be analyzed further. The sense of the contributions of Muslims to the Indian music is also one of the vital things to be taken for analysis and propagation. We have to make propaganda for that also, so that a kind of communal balance could be arrived at by understanding these kind of things. I don't know whether the filmmaker was having these points in her mind. And again, not only the architecture, the old buildings, there's some sort of psychological haunting, the kind of experience that I had when I had the opportunity of watching it in a very big screen. I have put it in the big screen in my home in the LCD theater. And I had experience of entering into the hall and some sort of highly nostalgic. The sense I don't know whether I have traveled all these places, I have seen these places, but it lands in my mind and disturbs me a lot because a kind of vacuum has always been shown. Some of the halls, music halls, have become exhibition halls. People who are selling fridges and sofa sets and all. Very painful to see all these things, but change is changes reality. We have to accept that also. In urbanization, slowly everything is changing. Yeah. So then I would say today, on the whole, the film slowly takes the audience with itself, slowly. We also travel along with the filmmaker. Finally, she has left us in the hall, and they all the filmmakers, others have gone. I was standing alone in the hall. The last scene, I felt like that, as if I am standing there, all others have left. She has left us in the hall, and she has gone. And a lot of thoughts started coming in after watching this film. And what is our tradition? What sort of pain have been taken by people? What is the current situation? Whether the current generation is interested in learning that. Of course, she was able to show that the girl who is representing today is also learning and trying to in many places also they are trying to learn from elders. Women folks are teaching them a lot, but this is happening in small groups. I would believe. I believe that it's happening in small groups. So on the whole, I would say it's a great effort taken by the filmmaker, and I would like to thank her for taking this pain to confidently she has traveled, and no compromise has been made. That is a great thing, because the audience, she demanded the patience of the audience on certain scenes. You have to sit and you have to travel along with us. This kind of policy she had, I believe. So this kind of watching the film, no, it mints the mind even to some extent. In the fastest world, we have lost our roots also. We are not bothering about the ancient tradition, and even especially music is part and parcel of anyone's life world. But this kind of music demands a lot of hard work for even to perform and also even to understand or even to enjoy to a major extent. So she was able to bring out the nuances of various aspects of learning this classical tradition, and also she has brought out how people have lived in those days. And the great giants, Bade Ghulam Ali Khan and all, performed without mic. And at one point, I enjoyed one aspect of this film. This is one information. And nowadays we have one lady says that nowadays we have a lot of audio testing units for testing the audio. We have a lot of we have equalizers and all other kind of techno things through which we can see whether the acoustics is balanced or not. In those days, they didn't have even the mic. The halls are having the acoustic, they are built according to that. So when the great singer, even the great singer comes and perform, they used to ask the last row person whether my low pitch voice, are you audible, my voice and all. This kind of, what would I say, testing their acoustics through practical interaction with the audience, it's also very interesting thing to learn. A lot of subtleties are there, and people are very still living there. I wonder, I really wonder to see such a world still exists. Such even still people are there and buildings are there. I don't think I can find such kind of places in Tamil Nadu, because we have erased all those memories by constructing a lot of concrete pillars, jungles and all. So I thank Madam for making this wonderful film with a lot of efforts. I know what an amount of effort she has put in, and the support has been given by some agencies. And I have seen some of our other films also today. Thanks a lot for making this to happen. We are expecting more films from you, Madam. Thank you so much. Amudan? Amudan? Irikara?
You have to ask her, you have to ask questions now.
Let her respond.
Yeah.
Let her say something. You can ask Amudan.
No.
No, I can respond to some of the things you have
said. Yeah, please.
Thank you so much for such a careful kind of watching of my film. Really appreciate it, because as you said, it is a film that I knew the way I was making that I could potentially lose a lot of audience, because I was very strict about how I wanted to tell the story. And thank you. I also just like to thank Amudan for really doing this consistently for so many years with so much rigor. So thank you so much, Amudan. Dr. Murli, to respond to your thoughts. So I'll give you a little background to the film actually. So this film comes out of a collaboration with Professor Tejaswini Niranjana, who is is from Bangalore. She's a cultural studies academic, and she's currently actually teaching in Lingnan University in Hong Kong. We have collaborated before as well. She was actually looking at it's a long standing, and her book is out as well. She's been looking at Hindustani classical music at the turn of the century, when Bombay is becoming Bombay, when it's becoming a city. It is where it's becoming an important colonial city, but it is equally a very important trading port. There is a native town where there are a lot of merchants. There's a lot of capital. There's a lot of money over there. Absolutely. And this is around the time, well, a little after the time when the princely courts all over the country are in decline. And until then, it's the princely courts, especially all over, whether it's in North India or in South India, who are the patrons of, whether it's the Carnatic tradition or it's the Hindustani, but primarily the Hindustani classical tradition they were the patrons. So this was music that belonged in courts. And perhaps you might find it in temples, but not even so much.
Yes, yes.
In Karnataka, Maharashtra, Goa, all these places, all these singers speak about also singing in temples. But in North India, it's really music that comes from the aristocracy. They are the patrons. Now, what happens is when the princely courts are in decline, suddenly these singers are now a little bereft. There are no patrons. This is also now around the time, one, that there is a lot of money in Bombay, it already starting. Mills have started being built. There's cotton trade, there's opium trade, you know, there's money. So, but this is also the time that recording studios have begun. So radio has begun. So now suddenly a lot of musicians would come to Bombay to give performances, to maybe record, to maybe get recorded for radio, and maybe an LP, and they would earn some money and go back to their village.
Okay.
Now, what happened at that time in Bombay, and these are the places that I show in the film, is that Bombay being a city, in a sense, ends up also democratizing this music. So now when the singers come there, they're staying in a chawl, which you see in my film. It was a chawl that was owned by a trader. And because he loved Hindustani classical, not a chawl, sorry, a room in a chawl in Girgaon area. Because he loved classical music so much, he sort of gave it to any musician who was passing through. They could stay 10 days, they could stay 20 days, they could stay a month. What would happen then is that the singer is over there, and he, in that room, it's a really tiny chawl room, he holds a kind of a baithak. And now suddenly this entire middle-class neighborhood is spilt out of that room, on the corridors, on the streets. They talk about concerts happening through the night. This is also the place that now this is around the time that the Ganpati Pandal has come up as a nationalist idea. So at the Ganpati Pandal, all these big singers who might be passing through Bombay are invited to sing. So suddenly it's literally from the princely courts, music is now available in the neighborhood. And of course, middle class, this is not a working class neighborhood at all. It's a middle class neighborhood. All the clerks working in the colonial offices live there. As I said, a lot of the traders live there. The business people live there. The big traders and big businessmen are already now living in Malabar Hill, which was the British part. But this is a middle class kind of neighborhood. So this is also the time. So now who are the people who are bringing the music? So one is, of course, a lot of the Muslim ustads, but equally, who are the patrons of the music? Who are the people who learn music? These are Tawaiffs and the Kalavan community from Goa and Karnataka, right? It's these two groups of people who are learning the music as well and are keeping the music traditions alive. So they start moving in here. Many of these businessmen and traders now become the patrons of these women. So it's, they are dancers, they are singers, they are Kalavans, they are not permitted to marry. So, it's a lot, not exactly the same, but a lot, like the Devadasi community. It's very similar, right? Now, these are the people who are the carriers of the music. And now the patrons are the traders and the businessmen. And Bombay being Bombay and the way it is, suddenly it democratizes the music so that the middle class that was that really did not have access to this music, now suddenly has access to the music. Many of these women and these Muslim ustads stay back in Bombay. Many of the patrons give them houses and let them stay, so they become residents of this community. So one of the other things that happens is that suddenly, when we keep saying Bombay is very cosmopolitan, it was really once. Of course, now I would disagree being a Bombay person.
Okay.
But, you know, in the last 20 years, there's nothing cosmopolitan left in any part of the country, even though we've had cosmopolitan traditions. So suddenly this is a neighborhood that has Parsis, that has Muslims, that has, you know, women from the Kalavant communities who are unmarried, who are living, you know, so suddenly it's a much more mixed kind of community. But what do we see when I go, whatever, 60, 80 years later, and we are doing all this research? What do we find? That yes, it was an incredibly exciting moment. They also, you know, it's also deeply got connected with the political history of Bombay at the time. This is right next to one of the halls is the Communist Party of India office. This is also the place where the first Dalit Panther office was set up, if I'm not mistaken. You know, so this is a very charged kind of neighborhood. Now, so many years later, what do we see? We find that Hindustani classical music is not dead. It's still very much alive. It's still, of course, it's not popular music, but it's very alive. But who are the people today who are the key singers? It's all upper caste men and women. So you ask the question, what happened? Where did the communities who kept the music alive for centuries, who brought the music to Bombay, where are they? You know, so they are no longer part of the music scene. Over time, they have got erased. The Kalavant community over time did not want to get associated as the dancers. So over time, they in fact, a lot of people I spoke to in the film are from the Kalavant community, but they refuse, they don't want to identify as such. They have become part of the middle class now. They now, meaning they you know, it's, they get married, you know, they're following the kind of the same systems that, you know, caste Hindus follow. So, and the community very insistent. They're still they're very proud of their lineage, but they don't want the world to, they don't want to publicize it, you know. So, and this is a very, you know, literary and culturally very rich community, and they hold on to that, but they don't. So whenever I would ask, so, you know, your grandmother was learning music, or your grandmother was a singer, and you know, so if I ask grandfather, we don't, you know, there are many grandfathers. There's no,
One grandma was telling you, I refer that I'm very popular among people.
Yeah. So you know, so over time, the identity that there were communities that were the ones, they were the caretakers of this music, that identity is removed. And now it's suddenly become a upper caste tradition, you know. It's good. So, but there is a time when upper caste boys and girls are not allowed to learn music. You can be a patron of music, but you cannot learn, because that is what the Ganewalis and the Muslims do, not us. Now, in this democratization, and it's in one way a very good thing, but in the process, the communities have got, their communities that have got erased. So while that stigmatization was a problem, this erasure is equally a problem. And it has happened organically. Now, today, that particular neighborhood is and what were these halls? These halls were not built to be music halls. These were halls that were built by community, for this community or that community. There is, you know, it's, these are not, these, except for that one where she says that we didn't need mics over here. The last one, Lakshmi Park. Even that actually was a marriage hall come music concert hall. But many of these places, like for example, that Chawl room, every important big singer from Bombay today will speak about their childhood of going to that tiny one room Chawl to listen to the greats, the absolute greats. You know, so it's interesting. But today when I go there, these places have nothing to do with music. There is no music performed there. One of the reasons is because it's a very congested area. The people who listen to music have all traveled north. In Bombay, the city has shifted north. This is South Bombay. It has shifted North Bombay. So like the neighborhood where I live, which is, you know, beyond Goregaon in Kandivali, it's a very middle class kind of set of buildings that are there. And we have a very vibrant Thakur Village music group. You know, so there are music groups all over the city in the suburbs who are very passionate about listening to the music. But there is no acknowledgement or even awareness often. Where did this music come from? Who has kept this music tradition alive? It's so easy to say the Muslims are invaders today. You know, it's bizarre. It's that they are part of our DNA. If you actually start analyzing it is, meaning if we were to say that everything that they have is alien to us, we'll basically have removed everything from our lives. So, you know, so these are histories that are important to constantly remember. Now, why did I make the film like it is? I did these absolutely fantastic interviews. People, and I love doing interviews, and people speak passionately, and they have so many stories to tell, and the stories are so lovely. But I felt more and more that it was seeming like only nostalgia, that, oh, at that time things were great, but now it's so terrible. But the point is, at that time, it was not that great. It was not that easy either, right? Like a Muslim man is performing in Brahman Sabha, but today Brahman Sabha, the ones who run that place, tell me that no, a Muslim has never entered our Brahman Sabha. And I'm like, you know, I have archival recordings because I had access to a lot of archival recordings in this place. So I had these archival recordings. I had these absolutely lovely interviews. And I said, what I want to leave the audience with is not a sense of well-being that that time was so beautiful, but a sense of disquiet that time and that understanding of music and communities is erased. And so, you know, when I went to shoot in these rooms and these halls, I didn't know what to do because they were empty. There was like, I kept saying, is there something happening? Is there something happening? Is there some concert? Okay, forget concert. Is there a wedding happening? Is there, let me shoot. But these were all Jinnah Hall locked up. It's next to Congress House. No, Jinnah Hall is the one where you saw that auction of those fridges and tape recorders.
Yeah.
That is Jinnah Hall. It's such an important historical place for the independence movement. It's right next to Congress House. Opposite Congress House is a place where the Kalavants lived. And these were women. So today it's just like a kind of a seedy brothel. But at that point, the fact that these women lived there, they were part of the community. They were supporting the Congress. There was no such thing as these are nachne walis, so they have to be far away from us. You know, it's all together. Now today, everything is just erased. So when I went into these halls and I was thinking how to shoot, like after 5 shots, they're also very tiny places. It's empty halls. But once I started shooting, I found that if you open a window, you have this huge, dark, empty hall. And from the window, you can see the street and you can see today's life. Or if you go, you know, so in each place, because I didn't know how to shoot, like other than 4 shots, I started looking for signs of life outside. And I started shooting like that. So in every frame you see, there'll be one corner where one train passes or vehicles pass or people are walking. But the majority of the frame is empty. When we were editing, it's a very difficult film to edit because when I started putting all the stories together properly, there was no analysis. It was just lovely memories. Lovely memories. So all of us have lovely memories about our childhood. Like, what's the big deal, right? Although these memories are historically important, but I still started feeling like I can't just tell a happy story of wo din achhe the. So then in the editing, my editor and I started saying that when we are in this place, and thank you so much, Dr. Murli, for saying it the way you did, that in the end, the filmmaker and the film left you alone in that big hall, you know, with this sense of that, what did it mean? Because when we were editing, we felt like that. When we would edit a sequence of, okay, you know, in editing, what you do first, wherever you have shot, you first line up the shots. It's called an assembly. When we would line up an assembly of, let's say, Jinnah Hall, and we would look at it, and both my editor and I would say that, my God, this tells us much more. The interviews, of course, tell us lovely things, but this is crazy. Then we started editing like that. Then I said, you know, I don't want to hear full stories, because full stories give you the feeling of relief. You've heard a good story. I said, let's take small fragments of all the lovely stories. And we had like 500. And we then, so it was as if we have entered this room and there are these 10 half complete stories from different voices. And at that point, we decided to even remove the faces, because it gets suffocating when you hear voices and you don't see people. And then I did more things to the sound. I removed the ambience and kept it like very still. So you feel suffocated, so that the first time you hear music, it's like a relief. So the only relief I give you is in the music pieces. And then of course my editor started laughing and saying, people are going to beat you up because 1.5 hours you waste their time. You tell them it's a film about music, but you actually make them listen to only 5 music pieces in the whole film. So in that 1.5 hours, it's only like around 35 minutes of music. The rest is nothing is happening. So she was convinced that after this film, people will say, this person has lost her mind and she doesn't know how to make films anymore. I said, as long as it's making sense to her and me, I said, let's go with it, because it was very intense for me. It was very, very intense. And as you said, it really required me. I'm not, even though from my speaking, you can make out, I speak fast, I speak a lot. I'm like restless. But this film really made me just, you know, also that was a time when a lot of this churn had begun in the country, and everything, this film was really a response to a lot of these things that were happening. So, you know, that's how this film came about. So this erasure and the silencing was really the main idea I was working with. I can't hear you. No.
Mr. Murali, you have to unmute your mic.
No, he's unmuted, but I think it's his headphone. No, you're unmuted and remove your headphones, Dr. Murali.
Sanjeev sir has joined.
Just listening in.
We still can't hear. Hi, Sanjeev.
Hi.
Still can't hear. Yeah. No. Suddenly, how did it go? We can hear you a little bit now. The volume is low, but little bit we can hear.
Even now, no? It's not loud.
It's not loud, but at least we can hear now.
Hello? No.
We can hear, but it's low. But we can hear now. Earlier it was blank.
Taking out the headphone might work.
He did, but it didn't.
Oh, it didn't work.
Normally it does. Now we can hear you, but it's low. Is your headphone, your earphone plugged in, Dr. Murali?
No, okay.
No, but we can hear.
Hello. I'll try to speak loudly.
Now we can hear.
No. Yeah, I have. No, okay.
Yeah, now okay.
You might have seen the film Bandish Bandits.
Not yet.
Have you seen?
No. I'm waiting to see
Because
it.
yeah, because this is that is about how people have been supported by kings and others, and it reminded me to some extent. But that was a very cinematic movie. The story was entirely different and have entertained us. In your film, I have seen sometimes I want to know about that. You have shown some faces only. At one point of time, you stopped everything and you have shown different phases. What does it imply?
Yeah. So the faces, of course, of all the people you have heard in the film. But again, as I said, I it's all these all very constructed things. But I sort of delink the voices and the stories from the people, because when you see a face and you hear a story, it engages you and draws you in a very beautiful way, and that's what I do in my films normally. But in this film, I needed to break that, because it was making me feel very good, and I was not feeling good about the thing. So but we were also getting like very you know we were also feeling like we wanted to see the faces. And then it just so happened, so most of the people we've spoken to are much older. So what we found is that, whenever you're setting up the mic or you're just sort of figuring whether all the
Okay.
questions are done or things like that, I found that we had a series of inner interviews. We had a lot of moments where the person is just quiet and thinking. And
Okay.
we found them very beautiful, like very, very beautiful. Again, we weren't sure, it's just that, so we put it all together and then we decided to actually put it together. And then it worked very beautifully with this one person whose face I show, who is listening to music. But when he was listening initially for that first almost 20 seconds, he looks like he is also still. And then suddenly he says, wow. And,
Yeah.
and the music is, because his tape recorder was quite far, it's not that audible. So, the kind of moments or images we had ended up giving us ideas about how to use it, because my own, forget what are the conventions of sensible filmmaking, even my own conventions, I did not stick to at all. The things that I like to do in filmmaking, what I consider to be my kind of filmmaking, don't ask me why. As I said, my editor kept saying, your life as filmmaker is over. No one's going to take you seriously ever again. But, that is the beauty. And, Sanjeev is here, an editor and filmmaker who we all admire a lot. But there are times when the material starts telling you how to edit. And then you stop thinking about whether this will make sense or not make sense. Is it correct? Is it wrong? What are we doing? This film actually allowed me to, rightly or wrongly, I don't know, but really it was very, it was a very different experience for me in the editing stage. There were times when my editor and I, after 4-5 hours of editing, just this very silent material would come out, and imagine someone like me coming out and not wanting to talk for another hour. So it was a bit unique for me.
To be frank with you, I had two of my friends watching this movie. And one was able to tolerate my pressure, so she said. The other person have openly told what is going on, sir. They are going on showing the hall and faces. And I told him just you have to contemplate on that. Then only you can get it.
No, this film, it can be very tedious. This film has the potential to be unbearably tedious if I don't know what it is. It's like something catches you and you can watch. Otherwise, this film doesn't help. It does not help the person in the audience at all to engage. It's almost a commitment that the audience has to have. I don't know if I will ever do something like this again, but there was something about this material that...
We have already been dumped with various images and fast moving images and everything, Yeah. This context, it's, unlearning has to be done.
Yeah. Again, just to give you a personal story, this is also around the time when, suddenly all these hundreds of WhatsApp groups, school WhatsApp group, family WhatsApp, extended family members you haven't met in ages because they are third cousins, those kind of family. And in those family groups, the kind of WhatsApp messages that were coming, all this nonsense that we see now had actually started coming in those WhatsApp groups, all this. So I remember, so I used to always be very shocked by, whenever I pick up my phone, I'd be very shocked by something one, you know, cousin uncle has sent or a third cousin has sent.
Yeah, this will happen.
How are people sending these messages? So I don't know. I have a feeling that a lot of this film was a almost visceral response to a lot of things that were happening at that time. It is of no relevance to anybody in the audience, and nobody would know that. But you know, it was one of those moments.
But
this film I have lost lots of audiences, and I might even add a lot of friends, but it's okay.
About one more scene, the tablaist who are trying to tune the tabla, no? Yeah. How did you take that shot? Because are they aware of you are shooting them?
Yeah, I was in their shop. So, you know, again, in this, right where this chawl is that I spoke about, it's all
very casual.
Everything is 5 minutes away from each other. Like you can do all these buildings if you were to walk. Okay. Within an hour, I would have covered the whole round. But this chawl, the lane that goes from it used to be filled with tabla makers. Today, there are only 2 or 3 left, but the entire lane was of tabla makers. So this particular tabla maker, he was still there, and he was a very lovely, chatty person. So we spent a lot of that. There were times when he would sit in his shop and we were also just resting. So, you know, so I'd done a lot of interviews with him. He, in fact, also guided us to a lot of places that we did not even know of.
They'll be
but I wanted, again, by then I had done the shooting in these, you know, halls. I went back to him and I said, I want to shoot from inside your shop, and the street behind you should, you know, people passing, so that design remains. So we just sat and it's again very tiny shop. We just sat with the camera.
I wondered, both of them were very quite natural. They didn't bother about you shooting them. And they were just very natural. It was quite natural.
Yeah, no, they had become friends and they had become quite used to us just sitting over there. So, yeah, that's one of my favorite sequences actually.
And about, again, how about government support to this kind of musical efforts?
So, you know, there is, as we know, there is kind of government support that exists. It actually started with the Congress government, but then, you know, there are certain musicians who will be supported, but there are so many more who will not, you know, so it is a kind of, again, patronage that is slightly skewed. There was never, unfortunately, any attempt to make this musical training much more accessible or, you know, so it was not a visionary kind of support that would have really let the music thrive. But then again, you know, it is classical music. It is not going to be music that everybody listens to casually. It wasn't even once upon a time. So it has always been a very specific kind of music. There are many musicians who get state support or central government support, but that created its own Brahmanism, as we know, with all our arts, whether it's dance or music. There's a lot of politics about who gets that support and who does not.
Yeah, naturally. In Tamil Nadu, slowly the Carnatic music also picking up. Even people belong to other communities are also learning that. And because of television shows and so many super singers, so many shows are coming in. So they think that unless they learn classical music, they cannot do this light music and all. That kind of faith they have. So all upper class parents started sending their kids to learn this kind of classical music. That's happening now.
Yeah.
Anybody want? Regarding your editor, did he have any kind of understanding about the whole? Have you narrated him in the beginning itself about what you are going to do?
No, as I said, it's a woman. She and I, you know, this film, when I started, it was a research project. I didn't even know if a film would come out of it. In fact, what did come out of it very early on, which I knew I would be doing, is doing a series of video installations. So it was also shot a lot like that, for video installations. I did not know or think that I would eventually make a film. But when we started working with the material, it's through the material that some kind of ideas about how I wanted to make the film started emerging. And she and I worked a lot in other films as well. So it was through my conversations with her that this peculiar form emerged.
Because mostly technicians or editors, if they don't have the understanding about what you are trying to express, it may not come out well, and they'll be in strain also.
Yeah. No. This was completely, in a sense, co-scripted by the two of us. So I would say something, she would sit with the material, do something else, but in response to what I had said, looking at her material, I would respond. You know, it was a very beautiful collaboration for the two of us.
Wiping out the hall, I thought that it's a kind of symbolic shot you are trying to place it there. Wipe out. Huh?
It is somewhat symbolic, but it was actually the only activity happening in these places. so
whenever, happening.
Yeah, so whenever I went there, if anybody was cleaning up, it was at least something to focus on. So yeah, it does become, you know, and all these halls have these huge portraits of people who are instrumental in setting up those places. So, you know, if you see in Brahman Sabha, you have Tilak there, you have all these greats over there. But today they basically say that no Muslim ever came into our place. So,
oh, it's become like that. So. It's quite unfortunate. What to do? Okay, Amudan?
Sir.
I think almost done.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much, Surabhi. Thank you, Mr. Murali. And I think we can wind up the session now, and we will continue this discussions tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Fine. Thank you so much, Aman. Thank you.
Bye, Sanjeev.
Bye, Surabhi.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Bye, Sanjeev. Bye.
Bye.